Well, guys, you've clicked on my video. It's obviously Michael Filatov. You've been checking out some of my videos, or it's the first one you watched. I'm here with Liam today, and I'm kicking it off. I'm going to ask him a couple of questions. Liam, number one, man, straight up for you. Give me a little bit of a rundown on who you are.
Yeah, so I'll try to keep it concise, but I found Michael through YouTube. I was just going through my subscribers and I was like, "Wait, I have a lot in common with this guy."
Mm,
And so I reached out to him and that's how we got on here, but I got into this whole realm, YouTube
mm,
particularly, and just the entrepreneurial realm in general, because I think like a lot of people, I had that itch. And I think I was 16, 17. And you see the
mm,
stuff on TikTok, YouTube of people driving the crazy cars, getting the internet money. And so I saw that and that totally grabbed my attention.
yeah.
And I feel like once you see it and you kind of have that innate feeling that you're perhaps meant for a little bit more, you
Mm,
can't really push it down. Like it's going to come out eventually.
sure.
So I was actually working at Chick-fil-A and I never thought of myself as a overachiever whatsoever. And I was going to the gym. I feel like a lot of people in this start with some sort of physical endeavor and then that's how they get their first little buildup of consistency. And so I was going to the gym and that's basically all I had going for me. And then I was working at Chick-fil-A and I never had any aspirations of being wealthy or successful before this.
Hmm.
And then as soon as I kind of got that itch, I was like, okay, I got to do something. So after about 7 months at Chick-fil-A, I quit my job and I started doing door-to-door window cleaning. So
Hmm.
one memory I have from that is as soon as I bought the supplies, I was walking out with my buddy Sam
Hmm.
and I see my dad and I have the window cleaning supplies and he's like, what are you doing? And I was like,
Yeah. What's this guy up to?
yeah.
Yeah.
And I walk out and I'm like, I'm gonna go clean some windows. And he's like, how much are you charging for that? And
Yeah.
I said, oh, I'm gonna charge $200 to $300. And he was like, dude, nobody's gonna give you more than $50 for that. And I still remember
Hmm.
it was literally the first house I knocked on, closed it, and it was $300. Me and my buddy split it, and I think it was meant to be that I got that first hit
Yeah.
right away. I think there is some beginner's luck out there that just
Sure.
pushes you a little bit forward. So I got that, and I was instantly addicted, and I was like, okay, I'm never getting a regular job again. I'm
Hmm.
committed to this.
Yeah.
And so then I did that for about 3 months, made a few grand doing that. And I was like, okay, I don't actually want to manually clean windows forever. So then I hopped into doing sales with Cutco. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to use this as an opportunity to hone in sales skills that I can use for the future. And so now I've sold over $150,000 of the Cutco product. And so
Hmm.
now I'm building up my own business. And so it's crazy because I started in fitness and now that's what I'm turning into my own business. So I started YouTube and that's been fun. I've made a YouTube video every day for the past 300 days now. And now it's led me onto this video.
That's
So
awesome.
yeah, I think that kind of sums up my story and how we got on this call.
That's so cool. Okay, so it went from like never really having the aspiration or kind of intention of being entrepreneurial to then cleaning some windows and getting into like selling Cutco, and now you're here.
Yeah.
Um, that kind of answers like the second question I was gonna say, what has led you to where you are in life? I wanted to touch on actually like even an observation on what you said is it's funny you say like you were in the gym, you're into sports. I find that like so many guys that I meet who perform very well in sales too, like guys who are actually very good, they always have a sports background. Like, I'd say maybe 1 out of 10, 2 out of 10 don't, but like the vast majority of them, these guys, I don't know what it is, and like I want you to touch on this, but from like what I've noticed, it seems like that kind of competitive nature is almost like a prerequisite oftentimes to not only be successful, right? Because it's kind of a kill or be killed attitude when it comes to business, but sales specifically, like it's not usually comfortable to go ahead and like persuade or influence somebody to buy something, whereas sports themselves aren't always comfortable too. I don't know what's your take on, and I want to ask you if you've noticed that as well. Like, what's your take on guys being in sports and competitive and playing something high level and then transitioning to business and sales further down the line? Because I've seen that trend time and time again.
Yeah, so Totally. And in recruiting, because I'm in the recruiting business right now for Cutco, and one of the biggest things we look for is like, who are the athletes? Because the
Mhm.
athletes always have, I think it's the tenacity. It's like stuff's hard. You have to practice, you have to put reps in, and you also have to be able to do things without seeing an instant return.
Sure. Yeah.
So I think that's the biggest thing is the tenacity and being able to chip away at something without seeing results and really being able to play a long-term game. I feel like athletes all have that. And then they obviously have the competitive drive, which is, I think a lot of superstar athletes, that's when they go into business when they're done,
Mhm.
because pretty much all of this stuff is kind of like, it's kind of like going to war. Like going to business is going to war.
Yeah.
Playing a sport, you're going to war against other people. And so I
100%.
think you become a little bit addicted to that game. And so
Mhm.
you seek it out sometimes through business. And that's where athletes find themselves.
Sure. Sure. I like that. It's kind of, oftentimes there are a lot of win-win scenarios, but it's also kind of zero sum. Like if you're on a sales team, not everyone can be number one. And like if you're somebody who's naturally competitive and for some weird reason you care about having that, or being that in that number one spot, it's gonna drive you. It's gonna make you work harder than the next guy. Frankly, just doesn't care. So no, that's so true. I've seen a job application before where like one of the questions, literally you're scrolling through it, it's like, do you have a sports background? Like what sports did you play? Whatever. Like that is a literal sales question for
Yeah.
a sales job. But I want to ask you kind of switching the topics a bit. What is the biggest problem that you see guys in their late teens, early 20s face? You can talk about yourself, of course, but like what do you genuinely believe one is the biggest things guys right now are dealing with that maybe isn't talked too much about?
Well, I think the obvious one is got to be, I think it's mostly fear. So the
Mm,
biggest problem, because most people can somewhere far back in their mind identify what they would ideally want to do.
mhm.
So for me, dude, I wanted to make YouTube videos since I was in like fifth grade, bro. I would take my mom's phone, I'd prop it up, and I would just make vlogs essentially.
Sure, sure, yeah.
And so, but you become accustomed to caring about what other people think, which is, derived back from, we were from tribes. So we thrived by being accepted. And if you weren't accepted, you'd probably die because we needed to work together. So I
Mhm.
think it comes from that. And so you go through high school, it's a really, really judgy age group. And you're just, there's too much fear where you think,
Yeah.
oh, I want to do this, but I'm afraid of what, my buddy might think, which was me. I remember like when I was getting into all this, initially I've kind of broken from it mostly at this point, but I remember before I would post videos that I was genuinely passionate about, I would
Mhm.
think about my friends who don't even live where I live currently. I'd think,
Yeah,
oh,
yeah,
they're gonna
yeah.
see this. And I think
100%.
that is the biggest thing is fear of what other people are thinking, which
Mhm.
seems obvious, but it's like pushed to the side. When
Sure.
if you can get over it, and the biggest thing for me with getting over it is really, really conceptualizing that someday we're just not going to be around anymore.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
everyone we know is not going to be around anymore. So you have to actually think about that because you think about it time to time, but it's
Sure, sure, sure,
once
sure.
you actually conceptualize it, even think about it day to day, it sounds kind of grim, but it's like, bro, you're gonna die. So
Sure.
start doing the stuff you want to do. And
Mhm.
as soon as I started doing YouTube, because it was something I pushed down for so long, as soon as I started doing it, I became immensely happier. So I think if everyone was able to tap into what they've always wanted to do,
Mhm,
but
mhm.
perhaps slightly neglected, not only would it make them much happier, but I think that's where they would find success as well.
So I actually want to add on to that, and I love what you said, but I think there's, I don't know if you find this to be true, but I think that a lot of guys who have that kind of fear when it comes to doing anything in life, whether it's quitting that job and pursuing their dreams or posting on YouTube or asking that girl out, I mean, most people are not okay knowing that they're losers, they're scaredy cats, whatever. So they start to rationalize and cope.
Mm.
They create excuses for why they're not doing something. So I guess the question I have for you is, it's great to tell the guys who are honest with themselves, hey, You're gonna die one day, memento mori. This all isn't gonna matter. Go and take that shot. Go and do what you're gonna do. But what about the people who actually, give themselves bullshit and work hard to convince themselves that that dream or that goal they have really isn't that important? What do you tell to the guys who make excuses and try and convince themselves that it's really not that important, right? Who kind of like push down that goal? Because you're talking to the people who are honest with themselves, and
Yeah.
frankly, a lot of people aren't.
That's a really, really good point and a really, really great question. And I think one thing I find with myself personally is I have trouble having patience for those people. I I can't make friends with people who are like that, which if I was in the business of helping people who are closed-minded,
Hmm.
sure, but I don't really come across a lot of people who, in my circle personally, I'm around people who want to grow, and so
Sure, sure.
I'm kind of tapped into that type of mind.
Hmm.
But for those people who rationalize, cope, those kinds of words,
Sure.
I feel like you have to, if you really wanted it, I feel like you'd be able to see through those.
Hmm.
And if you
Hmm.
don't, I'm personally not the type of person to try to persuade you otherwise. If
Sure.
you if you're that jaded, I think I personally just don't think you want it bad enough
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
for me, I could see right through those things
Hmm.
just with how big the vision is.
Yeah. Sure.
Does that
Sure.
answer your question?
No, it does. And actually, I wanted to just quickly touch on that. I want to ask you specifically in like your own life, when you felt the urge to maybe take a risk and to try something that like, your heart is telling you to do. Has there ever been a moment where you've done that and like you stayed true to yourself and you were filled with like massive regret? Or have you usually been pretty happy about the fact that you took that risk and you took that shot?
Excellent question. I have always been excited and glad that I took that shot.
Hmm.
Part of that is just my optimistic mind.
Hmm.
So whenever I do anything, I always see how it was at least a lesson.
Yep.
So I'm always flipping things and seeing how it's win or learn.
Hmm.
So in that case, I feel like I haven't ever thought otherwise. It's always been, oh,
Sure.
it was a win-win either way because I won or at least I learned, which
Hmm.
learning is
Hmm.
arguably more important.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
And so I can't think of anything I've done that I would say I regret whatsoever.
I like it.
I see everything as a piece to the puzzle.
I like that you say that, and the reason I ask you that is because I knew you were going to say that. Right? I can tell
Yeah.
your mindset. I'm speaking with you. I knew you weren't going to say, "No, Michael, there's that one thing. It's a massive regret of mine."
Yeah.
No, and what I think, to be honest, to almost answer my own question, which you still did a good job of, is like I think for the people who cope and give themselves excuses, I think one of the big reasons why they do it is because I mean they probably get overwhelmed by their own like deep dreams and goals that they have. They probably see them as so massive that it's easier to cope, but I think developing the mindset of somebody who's a risk taker is easier than to just go and tackle a big dream, right? So, in my opinion, I feel like if you at least yourself say that you've never taken a risk and really regretted it, I think the guy who wants to go and become the next Jeff Bezos can start with asking that girl out. He can start with, you know, going ahead and start striking up a conversation with a stranger. These little things that are getting, you out of your comfort zone that you tell yourself you don't need to do. And I
Mhm.
feel like I don't know, I feel like that's something that I did personally as well. That like, I went from me being pretty introverted overall to seeing my friend, be so extroverted, talk to people at the mall. And like in some ways, shape or form, I mean, that's part of the reason why I'm here right now. Like it's led to this like little domino effect that has completely changed my mind about a lot of things. So I think for those people, like, if you're coping and all this stuff, cool. Go and like take one little risk. Like you're probably not gonna regret it. And like start there. Do like one thing that scares you and then keep going. Because that's anyone can do that. And actually I want to touch on like, for you, because you're in sales, right? Because you're in the business of communication. It's how you get paid. How has sales and just mastering communication overall, that's what I call sales, really, mastery of communications. How's that translated to like your life, and how has it improved or deteriorated overall?
Great question. I think the biggest thing is communication. I think the most exciting thing about communication is being able to actually convey those thoughts that, because you can
Mhm.
think,
Yeah.
anyone can think these things, but
Yeah.
actually be able to put your thoughts into words, it's
Very true.
it's incredibly satisfying and it's incredibly inspiring. I feel like it's essential to aspire others.
Mhm.
So I think the biggest thing is, I mean, I find subtle pleasure in just locking in a clean sentence where I use like a nice
Sure. Yeah,
vocabulary.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But
Yeah.
beyond that, in the grand scheme, I think in my life, I've been able to just, one, it impresses people, which is kind of surface level, but it's as an aside, being able to communicate is very, very impressive.
Mhm.
And so I think you're able to go toe to toe with people who are perhaps maybe even more competent than you, or you're able
Sure.
to sit in those rooms where
Yeah.
you're around people who maybe you aren't actually qualified
Sure.
to be sitting next to, but because you've mastered the ability to communicate, it just opens so many doors.
Yeah.
And even just with my family, I think it's just kind of inspirational. I'm able to, I don't know, my family, they think it's cool. And I'm
Mhm.
able to just, I think it's just being able to inspire others, because that's
Yeah.
what I enjoy doing.
Yeah.
If you can't communicate, you can't inspire.
Yeah.
I think it's the ability to transmute those thoughts accurately that just makes
Yeah.
it's awesome.
100%. I love that answer so much, Liam, straight up. Like when you said that, I kind of, a couple words in, I think I knew where you were heading.
Mhm.
And that is so true. I think like sales, yeah, you're there to make money and close a deal and all this stuff, but end of the day, like you've got these, you know, you can call it whatever you want, but there's like a structure that you got to follow within sales. You get good at that. You organize your thoughts. You got to listen to people close. And what happens is you're able to convey what you're thinking and what you believe very effectively, very efficiently. Not only to the point where like people understand you, but people are persuaded by you.
Mm.
Right?
Mhm.
Not only do you tell people things, but you learn how to ask questions that lead someone somewhere, which is just so powerful. It's so effective. And it always comes down to what are your intentions, right? That's why sales gets such a bad rap. It's because there are people with bad intentions who learn the skill and hey, it's out there to be learned. But if you have great intentions and like you said, you love inspiring people. I mean, man, it's kind of like having the vision of a Picasso while being able to paint like a
Mm.
disabled person. I don't care how great your vision is. You got to have that skill to be able to paint, right?
Yes.
So communication similar. Like you can have the most beautiful thoughts, most articulate, genius word tracks, but if you can't say it in the right tonality, in the right way, at the right time, right volume, whatever you want to call it, it's not going to be very effective. It doesn't matter. And then like to kind of even wrap this up once again, switching topics a little bit. Um, I think us like self-reflective guys, I'm sure everyone watching this, you reflect, you ask yourself questions, you set goals, and you think, I want to stay consistent with X, Y, Z, right? I think, I've learned at least in sales, it's hard to focus on several things at once that you got to implement, right? It's much better to focus on one thing, implement it, and go on to the next, one at a time. What is one thing that you want to put out there, and that if you put it out there, you knew for a fact the future version of yourself would stick to it? What would be that one thing that you'd want, no matter what, to guarantee will come true? Whether it's discipline or a certain mindset or a belief or this or
Mm.
that, what's something you really want to stay consistent to?
So you're asking a new implementation that I think,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, almost like a goal for you, but
Yeah.
more so regarding your character. Not like, hey, I want to go get that BMW
Okay.
that's guaranteed. More like, what's something you want to add on to who you are and who your character is, or what your character is. And what's that one thing, if it could be guaranteed, what would it be?
Yes, I thought about this yesterday actually. So
Okay.
uh I'll wrap it up with a story. So I actually had
Mhm.
my buddy who started the door-to-door business with me. He came and visited and he was here for 2, 3 days. And we went to the grocery store and I bought all the groceries, which by the way, we're both trying to, get jacked. So,
Sure.
it was a pretty penny for me at
Yeah.
least. I'm
Yeah.
used to
Yeah. Yeah.
buying my own groceries. And so
I hear you.
I think my biggest thing I want to add to my character is selflessly giving without expecting anything in return. Because when I bought the groceries,
Mhm.
a lot of it's around food, but I think it goes deeper than that because I just
Generosity.
want to be a type of person that gives
Yeah.
without expecting, because I feel like that's
100%.
actually long-term greedy, but
Hmm.
I just want to give more selflessly without expecting anything in return, because I feel
Sure.
like counterintuitively in business that actually pays dividends in
100%.
comparison to the short term. In sales, for example, like the hard close, the pressure sales, you might get a deal here and there, but you're not going to be the type of person that people want to do deals with.
100%.
And
Yeah.
I want to be someone who gives more selflessly, and I feel like that's
Yeah.
probably just being entrepreneurial.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is all about building yourself up. So I think it's easy to become kind of egocentric and self-centered a little bit.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I just want to more selflessly give to other people, and that's obviously something I just need to put into practice. But
No,
that
I
would be
love
the
that.
answer to that question.
That's so good. That kind of like unapologetic generosity where like you really don't expect anything in return. And to be honest, for me, just to touch on that really quickly, like I remember seeing Jimmy Farley. You may or may not know him. He's just a guy who runs like a big TikTok, UGC kind of group, or it's like
Mm.
an agency. But long story short, he's always posting on his like Instagram stories, and I think part of his status. But he gives really big tips. But he's also like very much so into like putting that energy out there. And to be honest, I think that kind of abundance, that's also what it is. I think that's really what you show yourself and what you show God and the universe, whatever you want to call it. Like when you can go and be generous, like you're not attached to this stuff,
Right.
right? You've got that abundance mindset. And to be honest, the first few times when you're generous, I think it stings a bit. I think that's totally normal. You're like, damn, but it's a habit. And I think, just to touch on it, because I try and do that here and there too. I felt myself becoming less and less and less attached to any kind of giving that I'm doing. And it really does transfer to a lot of abundance. I mean, I've had times where money has come in from places I could have never imagined. And once again, I think it's just because of frankly, like the frequency that you vibrate at some
Yeah.
in some way, or at least the way
Yeah.
you think. So I mean, like, I loved all those answers. Honestly, Liam, all your stuff, feel free to plug it. It's all going to be in the description for sure for everybody to reach out to. But I'm so pumped that we were able to make the connection, and we were even able to have this little chat.
Yeah. It was
Yeah, plug
awesome.
yourself.
Yeah, I mean, the YouTube is Liam Wally, and then same thing on TikTok. That's the two platforms I'm on right now. So
Cool.
I post every day. I spam. So if you want to check
Yeah.
it out, I'm on there.
Okay, cool. We got a spammer, guys. Yeah, follow his stuff. And even for myself, same thing. Like YouTube. I mean, you're watching this on my channel. Click subscribe. TikTok's below. And yeah, if you guys are trying to learn sales with me, go ahead and fill out the form below and give me some feedback on this too. If you guys want to see more stuff like this, I know Liam and I want to do it. So there's a little type form there to give us feedback. So that's it, guys. Ciao.